Morning guys, welcome back to the channel. So today's video is just going to be purely dedicated to the Alpine Fiat underdrinks holder subwoofer. We've done loads of videos featuring this subwoofer, but I don't know if we've actually done a specific fitting video. This is fitting video number 1, and the reason for that is because this is pre-facelift. We've got 2 vehicles in today. We've got a pre-facelift 2021 vehicle, and we've got a newer vehicle 2024 in. But this video, as I said, is purely based on the pre-facelift, so that's a Ducato 7. Ducato 7 ran from 2006 to 2021, had a facelift in 2014, and this is for us to be able to fit our super duper Fiat Alpine underdrinks holder subwoofer. As long as you have the drinks holder, the central drinks holder in the dashboard and not the glove box, then this will fit nicely underneath here. But the reason why we're doing this video is because Alpine originally had one model to fit the Ducato 7, the Ducato 8 came out, or some also classed as the 9, and then they had problems with the bracketry. And what they've done now is this was all designed on left-hand drive, not right-hand drive. So they thought they were being clever by mirroring the brackets. Unfortunately, it's not, and it doesn't really help. So if you have got a Fiat Ducato, a Peugeot Boxer Citroen Relay from 2006 facelift all the way to 2021 before it uplifted or facelifted again, you will have a subwoofer that looks like this. They all look like this. They come as one part now in one box. That's why on our website it very clearly states that we only sell one product. It will come with this bracket attached to it. So you do need a spanner. Oh, be good if I had the right one. You will need a spanner, or you can use what we use is a T-bar or a socket set. It's completely up to you. It's a lot easier if you have the right tools for the job. But either way, whatever vehicle you are fitting this to, you will need to remove this bracket. I'm doing it just so that I'm on camera, otherwise normally I'd be on our workbench. So I'm going to, before we've done anything else, I'm going to remove this bracket, because this bracket is not for the UK market, and we need to then fit the bracket that comes with it. So we're discarding this bracket. We are now fitting this bracket. This bracket fits in exactly the same way. Is you're going to then fix it on like so. You can't really get this wrong. If you're thinking about doing some odd things with this bracket, it's just not going to fit. You have to fit it on the right way, and etc, etc. We're helping if I had it the right way in the first place. So you can't fit this bracket the wrong way. It's in and done like so. It lines up, all right? If you do try and fit it the other way, it's gonna face in, or you're gonna try and do it this way. I'm not sure how you want to try and do it. Either way, it does need to go on like so. So let's just put our bracket back on. So after you've just tweaked up your bolts, you should have a bracket that is nice and tight, square to the vertical line, and looks like this, so that the return on the L bracket faces back towards the back of the car, and this is how the bracket is orientated. A lot of people get this mixed up. It doesn't fit like this, it fits like this, and the reason for that is once this bracket is fitted in the vehicle, the subwoofer itself will go in and fit underneath the bracket like that. The holes line up for the little bolts, and then you can put the caps in, and this is of course where the drinks holder fits over the top, but we'll show you a bit more about that in a second, because at this point you don't need the subwoofer can go somewhere nice and neatly out the way. You do not need this. This is of no use. Stick it in your spares tin. This is how the bracket sits, and now we have the green light to start dismantling the car or the van, and we'll get on with that now.
Right, so trying to give you a decent run through of each step of fitting the subwoofer in one of these. I'll go through removing all the cup holder, what you've then got, what you then have to remove, and before I get to the point on this job of routing all the cables and things like that, we'll just run through how it's kind of look at the end of it. But at each stage we'll make sure we get it so you can see it and follow it. So first off, you're going to need T25. You've got 3 T25s, 2 up in the top here, 1 under your little rubber cover down here. So we're going to remove those, and then we can just gently pull the whole cup holder assembly off. Right, so now we can release the cup holder. There we go. And it's just got all these many clips that hold it into place. Obviously, if you've got a USB, then you'll just have to squeeze that and unplug it. That's your cup holder off. All right, so we'll put that out of the way. Right, so now we're left with this sort of rear framework. I'll turn my light on so you can sort of see as well. So we've got this rear framework that also needs to come out so that we can get to running the various cables that we'll need to run, and also mounting the bracket that, as you saw when James was showing you at the start of the video, that rear plate goes up behind it here and interacts with the screw holes that are at the back here. So what we'll do is we'll unscrew all these T25s. So we've got 2 up here, there's 2 either side here, and then a couple down low as well. And then we'll pop this out, and I'll grab the framework for the sub and I'll place it in so you can see how it then needs to sit and where it needs to pick up on the extra side bracket that gets changed over on this right hand side. Right, so that's all the screws out. Now we just need to wiggle this out of place. Sometimes this top end is pushed quite far up, so you can just get a little trim tool, pop that down, and then that releases this, and that comes out. And this is a perfect opportunity for removing these little metal clips. If it's come off the back of the cup holder, obviously you can get to that nice and easily, squeeze that out, put that back onto the cup holder, and that's easily sorted. So this is your kind of main framework where that will go back on once the sub framework is put on, and then you would mount your amp onto here, but you'll see that later. So what we'll do is just quickly we'll get the subframe and I'll place it in so you can initially see where it is, and then obviously we'll go through cable running and things like that. Right, so we've got down at the bottom here, we've got a T25 and a T25 down here. The bracket has this lower leg will interact with this T25 down here. So what you'd need to do is take this T25 out, which I'll do once I've run the cables and things. That'll go in there, and then this bracket here will line up with this metal bracket just here, where we'll put a bolt through, nut and bolt, so it's all fixed in on the side. And then as you can see, these 2 top holes here, when this rear section goes back on, interacts with those 2 lower bolts, and it then bolts it all in. So in theory, if you weren't to put this back in, you could bolt it in here, bolt there, and then the screw in there and everything, so these are screws, sorry, that would then be fixed in place, and your subwoofer would then slide on with the cables popping out and things. So we don't, now this is all open, we don't need to put this on yet, because we need to run the loom that interacts with the speed cables at the top, and also we need to run the battery and ground down into the battery tray. So now I've got all that apart, and you can see how that all works. I'm going to whip all the carpet out, we'll get to the battery tray, and then I can start prepping and running all the cables and things. Right, so carpet and battery cover all out. I'm going to assume you all know how to remove your battery cover and things. It's just all your half twist lock jobs. And then what I've done is I've removed the much longer T25 down from this corner here. As I said, we'll be interacting with that. So I've just removed that one for the moment. And then I've sort of prepped everything so I'm ready to fit it and you can see it all going in. So this is the loom, or one of the looms you'll get with your kit. This is so you've got this, and I've got to work it all now. So this end here goes up to where the amplifier is going to be mounted on the rear frame section at the back here. That's going to be plugging into the amp, and then these two plugs are going to be plugging into the speaker cables and the remote cable that drop down from the head unit. Then you have this longer cable, which is red and black, so that's just obviously battery and ground, and they're going to come down into this battery compartment, and we'll run those in, and I'll show you how they get run. The only thing I do, and this is just through experience, is, as you can see, this is all sort of clothed. This loom comes with the breakout much further down here, so this little plug here is what comes out and plugs into your subwoofer. What I've learnt is if I just separate the loom out slightly and then re-cloth it, it just gives this subwoofer loom a little bit more length to play with. Makes it a bit easier for when that cable is coming out through here, you've got a bit more length to work with in terms of plugging in the sub and then mounting it onto the bracket. You don't have to do that, obviously, it can work, but I've just kind of learned over time of fitting so many of these that it just makes my life a bit easier. And then also I've clothed my two tails for the battery, obviously because that's coming off the fuse, and then my ground. You don't have to cloth it, it's not going to do anything, it's just that we're keen on clothing everything, so you know everything looks nice and smart and neat, and obviously you don't get any vibrations or anything like that. So you've got a few options for running stuff. The way I run things is to make sure my loom runs behind this lower bar, which is of this dash trim here, so it runs up behind this, and if you can run it up behind the metal bar that's in behind here as well, so it then pops out through here, and that will be this end coming out through there, so we can get to the subwoofer, to the amplifier, sorry, because that's all coming in the top. It's a bit difficult to just show it with it all open like this, but you'll gradually see it all come together. So what I'll do is we'll feed this up here. Let's go behind here so we can see it all. So we're going to need approximately that much sort of loom that's going to drop in through the top of this hole here. So as this goes on, this loom will drop in through there and we'll be able to access it for the amplifier and things. Okay. And then that can just sit there for the moment because we can sort that out. Then the battery cable and the ground cable are going to drop down behind this piece of plastic here and out through this hole and then into the battery box through this little join in the foam here. At least then, you know, it's not going to get damaged or anything like that, and it'll be held in place. Okay, so we only need approximately that much cable in the battery box, but because there's plenty of slack left over, we can use a little bit just to have it sort of hiding in the battery box, and then we can sort out our loom so it runs along. You can tuck it under your mat a little bit just there, so it's out the way. And then if you do have any cloth tape or even electrical tape or a couple of cable ties or something, you can then just sort out this slack back here so it's then attached to itself, and you could even cable tie it to there so it's then not rattling around. It's probably not going to rattle around, but yeah, all in the name of neatness and things. Then we're just going to attach onto this little 10mm nut just here, so we'll get a little 10mm, undo that, pop our ground on, then we run the battery across, and then we'll be just going on to this main point here. So that'll be a 13mm that we'll do. We'll undo that, pop those on, and then that's essentially the battery connections done. And then we're ready to start concentrating on getting the bracket to fit along with the main cage that goes in. Right, so that's battery connected, ground connected. I've just run the cable in just nicely. It's all just going to sit there. The fuse you can sort of just tuck out the way, but you'll often find there's plenty of bits and pieces that are down and in and around this area anyway. So if you wanted to, you could cable tie that to something. It all depends on what you've got to hand and things like that. And then, as I said, this little extra bit of slack that I had from my power, my red and black, I've just used some cloth tape, just doubled it back a couple of times and created a nice little section just there. It's not going to bang against anything, it's not going to rattle, it's just going to sit there quite happily. Excuse the sneezing. And then we can get on with kind of lining up our bracket. So I've got a hole at the back, down the bottom here. We've got a hole here that the subwoofer cable can go through. And then we can start to line it up. Now, as I said before, this right hand bracket that is the kind of L-shaped one is going to line up with this metal bracket here. Now getting a bolt onto that can sometimes be fun, but luckily because it's all unscrewed, it's all quite flexible. You can move it out the way and then you can just pop it all back into place and things, and it will all sit back in place. Now unfortunately the kit doesn't come with a bolt, so you'll need either an M10 or an M8 bolt, which will be nice and strong. Nylock on there. I didn't have one exactly the right size, so I've just cut it down, and it's probably about 20mm. So if you were to look at getting a nut and bolt, you only need about 20mm, maybe a smidge less. Chuck a washer on there, and then that will just go in. And then it is a little bit fiddly for getting a socket and a spanner in there, but it's perfectly doable. And if you're DIYing this, then you're probably used to doing those sorts of things anyway. So it's just a case of, at first, getting everything to line up, popping your bolt in there just loosely for the moment so it's just nipped, but you've still got a little bit of movement. Then we can get the T25 in, the screw in down here, and again, not mega tight, just with a small amount of movement, so that as we start to put everything back together, we can keep this sort of pushed upwards as much as we can, which will mean that when the sub goes in, it's all sitting as high as it can, and then it'll be nice and tight to the bottom of your cup holder when we then put it all fully back together finally. So just, it's all those little things about thinking ahead, so that once you finish, you don't look at it and think, oh, I could have lifted that slightly. So I'll just get on and start putting some bits in place, and then I'll show you where we're at. Okay, so I did, admittedly, I've just pushed this side up as far as I can and then just nipped this one up just so it's not too slack, but I've got a little bit of movement just here, you can see, but I can get in there still and tighten it up. You can, it is snug, but you can push this piece of plastic down here out of the way to get your socket onto the back of your nut, or you can just use 2 spanners, whatever you want, but it is all pretty pliable. If you wanted to use a smaller nut and bolt, you could use like M6, M8. Yeah, that would work fine. It's just to hold that bracket. So now we can start looking at putting this back in place, or putting it in place. So, as I said, this section of the loom is going to drop in through the top of this hole, and obviously we don't want to forget this either. So we can start to feed all that through, and then we can just line up everything to get it all so we know that we're going to be happy. Then we need that to sit there, and then we'll be able to see that we've got the subwoofer mounts at the back of this plate, so where this flat plate comes up, they'll line up at the back here through these two lower holes. So that's where, when we put those in, we can just again put some tension on the bracket, pushing it up, and then we know it's all sitting as high as it can do. Alright, so we can now start to wiggle everything into place. I like to push this top section fully back so it all sits up and in, and then we can get everything in place. So that all looks like it's sitting and holding itself. I didn't take my little spiky clip out, did I? Let's fish that out. Try not to drop it. There we go, got that, so I can put that on my cup holder in a bit. Put that there. Okay, so let's get our longer screws and put in here. That's about right. Okay, so we'll put our two top ones in. So that's that fixed back into place. Got my screws in here. We don't have to worry about these ones because those are obviously the two that went in the top when we took the cup holder off. But I've got all the rest in, and as you probably saw, I just put a little bit of tension on this just to make sure it was up, as I said before. So I'm just going to fiddle around and get my nut and bolt tightened up down here. I can still get my spanner onto it in the little gap down here, so I'm just going to do that, and then what we'll do is we'll get Sammy on the other side of the van for a different view, and we'll run through the next stages of fitting this whole kit. Base controller. So this is just a little simple controller that allows you to turn up or down your sub. So you can kind of fit it wherever you want, really. It all depends on what's going on in your motorhome and how involved you want it to be. We tend to, with the older Ducatos, the Ducato 7, you can tell by the shape of the vents and things, you tend to have this pocket here. Unless the van has some sort of hydraulic or suspension setup of some sort, this pocket tends to be pretty free and open. So what we'll then do is aim to fit it just in here off to the side, so you could still maybe get something in there if you wanted to, but it's just sort of sat out the way, easy to reach by the driver. Admittedly, once you've sort of got it set to where you normally listen to it, you're probably going to leave it alone, but even still, it's nice and easy to access. If you haven't got this nice open pocket, you can always fit it over here. I'll turn my head torch on quickly. You can mount it over here as well, but what you might need to do is just cut a little section out of this knee panel, but you can use that because also it's not going to get in the way of your knee, you're not going to knock it, but again, easily accessed. But on this occasion, with this motorhome, we're going to get to this little pocket, put a little hole in the back for the cable to come through. It just works as, it's just like a little Cat 5 cable basically. So all you need to do is make a hole that's just big enough for that to come through, and then just think about your length of cable. Now, they give you a lot of cable, admittedly, because it all depends on where you want to fit it. But what I tend to do is work out my rough distance, and as before, I'll cloth the whole loom so it's not going to bang against anything, and then my little bundle of slack that I don't need will be clothed up and then cable tied to something so it's not banging around. So we can get on with doing that now. Right, this knee panel comes out, it's just two T25s, but sometimes you'll find that they've been changed for posi drives, so they'll just be a longer, meatier posi drive, so you'll just have to see what you've got, but nice and easy to remove. And then we'll just give it a nice little gentle pull. Obviously, if you've had any sort of switch fitted to here, you might have crimps, cables crimped onto the back of it. It's always good to just take a picture so you can move this out of the way, because if you then have taken the crimps off the back of that switch, you can then obviously reinstate it. So we can just move that out of the way. And then we're going to remove this pocket by just undoing this little T25 just here, and then we can pop this pocket out, and then you'll see that everything is really nice and open, and because we've still got everything open here, we've got good clean access to everything, so it's nice and easy. So what I'll do is I'll pop that out, and then I'll get myself into a better position for running my cable. Right, so as the amp is going to be mounted on this left hand side in the back of this kind of substructure, I don't really know what you call it, framework, rear cup holder framework, that's going to be mounted in there. We obviously want to have enough of this cable to drop through this hole at the top here and plug into the top end of the amp, because we're going to have it that mounted that way round, and then once I've worked out my length and clothed my cable, I'm then just going to bring it into this loom a little bit so it's all one section. So that's going to be sitting about there. So if I was going to have that sitting there, that was plugged in there, about where this first bend is, I'm going to need about that much inside here. So what I can do is I can cloth this. Now I'm going right across the dash, but we want to try and avoid getting involved with where the steering column is. So if we can find a loom that we can get onto, we can then chuck a couple of cable ties on. It's not getting snagged on anything, it's not going to be flapping around, but we also, like I said, don't want to get involved with where the steering column comes up and down, so we don't want to put any unnecessary tension on the cable or anything like that. So we'll work out a rough estimate of length, so it's going to be give or take that. So we're going to have a couple of coils of slack that I can work out either having this end or this end, and then cloth up my loom, and then we'll find a nice route for it to run through, and then carry on from there. So it's a bit tricky for you to see from the camera angle, but it'll be tricky to see anyway, depending on where the camera was. But I can see I've got a little loom in here that I can run a cable tie onto for my cable, and then I've also got another loom that's tucked back in here. But if you're running this, you can kind of have a look and work out where you want your cable mountings to be. So for the moment, I'm just going to run the cable through here. Bring it along. That's going to cable tie onto that loom down there, and then I'll have enough for my pocket. So because we're going into the left hand side of the pocket, I'll then have plenty for that to be in there, and I can find a nice couple of places for the cable to be cable tied up back here, and obviously there'll be one over here, and then we know that we'll be out of the way of any movement of the steering column. So I'll get on and do that quickly. Then we will probably drill out the back of this pocket so that the controller can be mounted. then that can go back in, and then we can head back over to this side and start looking at the amp positioning, plugging it in things, and then going from there. Right, so just need to produce a nice simple hole up in the top corner up here. You can use drill bit, whatever you want really, but because of the size of the plug, if you want to remove that material quite quickly, you can use a step cutter, so you don't have to have a massive abundance of drill bits. So all you need to do, because they tend to be labelled with what size hole they've got, you can just sort of line it up with the width of this section here and then the height of it. I think, well, is it 14 or 16 mil? So I'm going to go with a 16 mil, and then just using a knife we can just square it off ever so slightly, and the plug should go through nicely. Little tip for using cone cutters: instead of having to count how many steps you've gone through, what you can do is up to your maximum point where you don't want to go any further. So I want to go up to 16, so we've got 2 steps left. I'm just going to stick some tape around it. Oh, that's been cut. One minute. Stick some tape around it. And then I know I can use the cone cutter, or the step cutter, whatever you want to call it, all the way up to that point, and as long as I don't go past the tape, I know that's going to be the right size for what I need, so I don't have to be counting the steps through. So we want it slightly out from the corner, because that's going to be sitting there and it's not right down at the bottom. So we're going to go slightly out from the corner, ever so slightly down, so it's going to be around this sort of area. You can be real nice and precise with it and measure, but I know it's going to be around that area, and also we'll have the whole of the back of this to be covering that hole anyway, so it's going to look nice and neat at the end of it. So let's get that done. There we go, nice clean hole. And just take any little burrs off that so it's nice and smooth. You can use a knife, nice sharp blade, or you can use an actual deburring tool. I have got one around here somewhere. One deburring tool. Just deburr this hole slightly, just so it's all cleaned up a little bit, and then what we'll do is we'll just go and check that our plug slides through it nicely. But as you can see, as soon as that's situated in there, you wouldn't be able to see the hole anyway, so it's just nice and neat, but it saves you having to wrestle with a hole that's slightly too small or anything. So we'll pop round, make sure it goes through nicely, and then we'll talk through mounting the sub-controller. So 16mm hole, plug, just going to go through really nicely. Haven't got any issues, and as we just saw, the sub-controller is going to cover that, and it's just all nice and neat and tidy. So now let's go back over to the bench and we'll talk about how we're going to mount the sub-controller, how it goes on, and then yeah, we can go from there. Right, unfortunately the kit doesn't come with any sort of like sticky double-sided pad to stick this down, but it does have a little hole there that you can pop a little screw. Again, unfortunately, it doesn't come with a little screw, so you just have to find something that's quite flat and also quite low as well, so that when it all clips back together, it doesn't get in the way of the bottom of the circuit board. All right, so it's all going to clip in like that. So first what we're going to do is we're going to attach this in here. I'm also just going to use some very thin double-sided tape that we've got, just so it's nice and neat and tidy and really stuck down. So before I do that, I'm just going to give it a good old clean, mark where my screw's going to go, put a little hole through, and then I can then start mounting it all so it's all really solidly mounted and isn't going to just fall off or vibrate or anything like that. Right, so I've just had my wrist slapped because I was wrong. It does come with a little sticky pad that sits in there, little thin foam one. I'll be honest, I completely forgot about it because I'm so used to just using our stuff for when fitting these things, because this 3M tape is obviously a lot stronger than these little foam pads. They are good, they work a treat, especially if you prep the area first. You just have to, you know, the more you prep something and give it the best chance to adhere, the better it's going to stick. But yeah, I just forgot basically. So it does come with, it just doesn't come with a screw or anything like that. So I use the screw purely so that you've got that secondary hold, so at no point is it going to come off. So I've got everything prepped, got a little hole in there. I've stuck our little thin double-sided tape on. I'm now just going to peel this off, sit it in place where I wanted it to be, wind my screw in, and then we're good to go back over to the van, plug it, run the cable through the hole, plug it into here, and then this can then be fully clipped into place onto the base that will be fixed into here. Right, so we're good to fit this. You can, actually I will in a minute, I'll just trim this screw down so it's not quite so spiky. You could also put something over it. So I'll do that, but I'll show you it going in because I'm already here. Jason's just taking the door apart. So, obviously, plug's going to go through, so it's ready to plug in. And then when you're reinstating this, you just want to make sure your 3 little hooks here all go into their 3 little places that are just tucked up out of the way. You can wiggle it in, and it just means you'll get that real nice fitment as it goes in. So, tell you what, let's just show you that going in now. So you can see them going in, there we go. Then that's all just going to click into place. Your little bit of slack's going to go in. Once we've plugged the base controller in, and then it's going to clip onto there. So I'm just going to sort out that little bit of thread so we haven't got it too much overhanging, and then we'll get it all in and done. Okay, so sort that. Now we're going to, there we go, place all those back in there. Our T25 is just going to go back in there, so that's all fixed in place. But let's get our base controller, shall we? So that's just going to click in there, nice decent click, and then we can put all that back into there, and then we're just going to line it all up, make sure we're happy, and that's now clicked in place. Screw that in, push it up so it sits in nicely, and there we are, one base controller in place, ready for us to now carry on with the rest of the install. Okay, now we're at the more fun bit where we can start fitting everything and making it look nice and smart, and we'll be closer to getting it ready for being tested and used. So this long lead we've got coming down here is the other part of the loom that is picking up that speaker output from the ISO section of the plug. So that is the T-harness plug that has the speakers in it, and it comes up to here. So it's already been, admittedly, it's already been prepped for me and put in because we're fitting a halo in here, but it's this section of the loom here. So we've got your black and brown, and then your female end at the other end, and you can just see here, this is our loom that's running down. All right, so then you'll pick up your speakers there. So what that's doing is it's picking up the speaker signal from the rear channels. It's then running it into the amplifier, which is then removing all the higher frequencies and then just pumping all the lower sub frequencies down to the subwoofer, and obviously amplifying them as well to give it a bit more punch. Right, so what we're going to do is we've got this section that we poked through earlier. We've got the 2 little plugs here. We're going to plug these into here, and as always, any slack that we've got left over, we're just going to tidy it all up, a little bit of cloth tape, and just try and get it all tucked away so it's neat and tidy but not rattling on anything. So we plug these in, and then at the same time as sort of doing all that, we can then obviously sort the other end of our sub controller, which is going into the amp, where I said that I was going to drop it out at that sort of point. So for instance, if these are plugging into the amp like that, this is further up. We can just cloth it into the loom. So again, it's just neat and tidy, and you know you've done a good job of it. So let's get that sorted, and we'll show you what point we're at when we then come to fit the amplifier. So what I did there, just to get the length I wanted for the bass controller, was I didn't fully plug them in. I just sort of rested them in like that, gave them a little tweak, and then worked out how much cable I wanted so I can have it all sitting nice and neatly, so that when it's done, even though you won't be able to see it, just before you put it away, you can at least look at it and think, yeah, did a good job of that. Because a bit of cable management is always nice, isn't it? So now what we'll do is we're going to, because we're using the Velcro strips and things that come with the amp kit and everything, we're going to give this area a real good clean, because obviously, as we know, prepping the area means that everything's going to stick and adhere as best as possible. So we're going to clean all this area and this area, and then we'll stick both sides of the Velcro onto the amp, roughly working out where we want it to sit, and then we can place it on, and then we know that if we want to take it off, the other side will stay stuck to here and onto the amp. We all know how Velcro works. So, and then we can plug it all in, and then we're good to slide the sub on into place and plugged into its plug, and then we can start putting it all back together, and that's essentially it. There we go, so just prepped the area, and I've then just lined it all up, pushed it on, and as you can see, that's not going to fall off in a hurry, is it? It's pretty fixed on there. Good little tip, whenever you're using any sort of Velcro or anything like that, it is good stuff, but if you stick it on and then kind of give it a bit of a wiggle around, it helps all those little hooks and things to really mesh and bind in, and it just gives it a much better chance of doing its job. So now what we can do is we can plug all of these in. So let's do that. We want to make sure we get that nice little click in there, so we know it's definitely in and home. That's the speaker one in, and then the controller. There we go. There we go. We've got the USB sat there. As you can see, look how neat that is. Isn't that tidy? And it's all going to be out of the way of everything now, so it's just going to sit there, do its job. We can now go and get the sub, slide that into place, make sure it's all plugged in, and then we can put the cup holder back in, and that's how you fit all the framework for the subwoofer on a Ducato. So we'll do that, and then we'll kind of sign off the video, and we'll be done. Okay, so this is where that little extra length that I talked about trying to sort for the sub comes into play. So obviously we can get our hand in here, because you can see this is anchored here at the back of the sub. So if you only had sort of, you were back here, it all becomes a little bit fiddly to get in and try and plug it in. So that's why I just sort that little bit of extra loom. So we'll just plug that in, and then we're good to move the sub around and get it lined up for sliding onto these arms here. So what we'll do quickly is we'll unplug it, and we can see that we're going to slide down into these little gaps here, and the sub is going to, those arms, are going to hook down into here until the holes line up so we can put our screws in. But an extra little tip for you, you'll know when you're pretty close to it being right in place, because on either side we've got these two little hooks here, and this top section at the rear needs to be slide in and hook in underneath that, which will then stop the sub from being able to sort of flop forward, sort of thing. So we'll know it's about in the right place when we're fully locked in at that back point. So unplugged in, we gradually push a little bit of that loom back through that hole. And then we can get it all lined up, feed them more back through, and you can see I'm just going to play with it until we get that nice hooked in feeling. So bear with me a second. I think that's not far off. So I'll get down and have a look through these little side holes, but you can see that's how that's going to sit on there, you see. And because we worked hard to get the bracket sitting up, it means we've got a nice decent amount of clearance. Now, all depends on how thick your carpet is. Sometimes, you know, your carpet might be thicker, so it's just going to fill up that space. It's not a bad thing, it's all good. The sub doesn't have a major excursion on it, so the X-Max, if you like, which is how far the cone travels, isn't huge, so it's not like it's going to be thumping away into your floor or anything like that. But this is just a nice example to show that, you know, we've got the carpet under there, we've still got a nice amount of gap, and it's all going to fix in nicely. And that's essentially, before you put your cup holder back in, that's how it should all look, really, all nice and neat with the amp, sub all in place. We'll screw it in, and then we can pop the cup holder in, and that's it. That's how you fit your subwoofer bracket, your amp, and all your cabling. Right, so I've put, using the 4 screws that come in the kit, they're just 4 little black Phillips screws. I've put 2 in this side already. Holes are perfectly lined up, so yeah, just sitting it all back like that, sitting in nicely, holes lined up straight away. Then once you've got your screws in, you then have these little filler caps, sorry, and they just sit into the screw holes. Now, one thing to bear in mind is they are keywayed, so they all have a little notch taken out of them, and then in the hole they've got a little keyway in there, but the keyway is in a slightly different place from this side to the other side, so just be aware of that. If you're trying to push the little cap and it's just not quite going, check for that little keyway, otherwise you're just going to mash it and you'll be there for a while getting annoyed with it. So I'll just pop these in. There we go. Little caps are in, so it's all now just nice and flush. They're visible, so if you did need to take them out, you can get to them, obviously, but it just smartens it all up. So as Jason's working over the side, and we don't need them in necessarily right at this moment, we'll then slide the cup holder back in, put it all in, we can chuck those 3 screws back in, and that's it. It's all in and fitted. Right, so bottom section of the cup holder obviously just slides in between the sub and the bottom of this framework. As you can see, there's a little bit of flex there. So just for that initial getting it into place, push the sub down slightly, run it down. I'll tell you what I haven't done. I haven't put my metal clip back on this post down here. Just slide that on quickly. There we go. Not going to forget our USB. Plug that in, and now what we're good to do is, it's useful to have a little torch for this, I have found in the past. Even if you're not fitting a sub, you're just taking the cup holder out for any reason, it's useful to be able to look through and just line up all those clips before you can then push it home. It starts to kind of go in part way. There we go, that's all going to go, and then we're good to push it in. There we go. And that's it essentially. I can put my 2 T25s back up in there, T25 in the bottom. Obviously I still need to just put the 2 screws in the side, but that's, you know, exactly the same as this side. But that's it. It then just sits there nice and neat and tidy. And then once I've put the new head unit in that's going in this fan, I'll then obviously be able to power it all up, test it, test out my sub remote that I fitted over in the pocket, and these customers should be pretty happy. Right, hopefully that's a pretty comprehensive guide to how to fit a subwoofer and amplifier and bass remote into a Ducato 7. So hopefully that answers any questions you may have. Obviously, if you have got any questions, further questions that I might not have answered, but I think I covered everything and gave you a few little hints and tips there. Obviously, just drop them down in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. But yeah, like I said, I think I covered pretty much everything and everything I've learned over the time of fitting all of these kits, the little bits and pieces that we've had to tweak over the years. But yeah, that's it, all in and done. Hope that helps you. Hope you enjoy these how-tos and things. If you do, give it a like and subscribe. Make sure you've subscribed, obviously. Leave any comments and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.